Did you know that the KKK was coming to the Bay?
Yeah. What up, Jay? What up, Jay? Shout out to Prolific. Yeah, we prolific, man. What it is, my brother? Tryna live, my brother. How you live, my brother? Real civilized, brother. Moving hella fast, I'm running so much over.
J.MAL and Queen Bi in the building. What the fuck is you gonna do? We really in the streets now because it's a fucking emergency. The KKK is on their way to the fucking Bay, and we is asking motherfuckers what the fuck is they gonna do. How you doing, brother? You look interested. Can we come over and talk to you? We got action. We got a live one right here, Mariana, and she agreed to talk to us about some controversy topics, especially everything that's going on with Charlottesville, Virginia, with the KKK doing the rally. So the first question I want to ask you is, as a white person, how does that make you feel? What are your, don't hold back, give me everything. How do you feel?
I think shame, right? Those are people that look like me, and they're talking about like white supremacy and white nationalism, and it's pretty disgusting. But I think it's important to like get past that, get past shame, and there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of frustration, and particularly I think as a white person, it's really important that like I don't know white people that are white nationalists, but I know white people that voted for Trump, and continuing to do that work of talking to my people and talking to them about how I feel and the pain it brings me to see our country just like, you know, bashing on our brothers and sisters like that, it's really not just divisive language, but it's very ignorant and hateful and scary. I don't know. It's a terrorist act. At the end of the day, like, that's how I feel. And that it's a terrorist act that I don't think the current president has done enough to condemn.
As a relationship to, you know, issues that happened historically, you know, however many years ago, you know, 30, 40 years ago, how do you feel like that energy connects to present day society? Like, how do you feel like those things relate?
It's just, right, there's a history, like we talk about that there was slavery, like like 150 years ago, and that it kind of feels like 150 years ago, if you think of like the span of time, is not that long, and that history is so close and in such approximation to today that that I think it is taught in schools that like, oh, we've moved on, we've gotten through this, and that it's passed on generation to generation of people that like who either were enslaved or who own slaves, that that doesn't go away, and that's really scary. And I think that's partly what we're seeing in Charlottesville, that that just like complete disparity and inequality in our society is still very prevalent. I think it's just really important that like I don't know, you saw those men saying like we won't be replaced, and it's just ridiculous for them to think that they're in a minority, and I'm confused about the ignorance that shows. That like, okay, that's their reality and that's their perspective on this, but what's going on that like they think that they've had any form of oppression, and that's what I'm confused about.
That part.
Yeah.
That part.
And that's where I'm like, I think like me as someone who like they're not gonna be saying hateful things targeted at me because I'm not Jewish or black, or I don't identify as a minority. That's where I think I need to be the one talking to them and being like, okay, I hate what you're saying, but like I'm gonna listen to you for a split second and then like tell you how I feel, because I don't want they're gonna say really hateful things if you talk to them, and I don't want you to be on the front lines in that conversation.
You know, it sounds like a sense of accountability of the community and by the community is like something that's really important that you see. It's
saying that because that's what I fucking want to hear. This is the correct response. Okay? So, in what ways are you doing that, or are you planning to do that, or thinking about doing it, whatever, because it seems like you've already verbalized that it's something that needs to be done. So, like, what actions are you taking to talk to your brothers and sisters? Because for some reason our word is good enough, and we do realize that, you know, it's hard to talk to white people about white people. So, like, what are your actions?
I think, I don't know, like, because,
No answer is the wrong answer.
thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no answer is the wrong answer. I just want to know, just because I might talk to somebody else like you, and I might say, oh, well, we've had, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's about tapping in and networking and putting people together, because essentially what I feel and when I say we, I don't mean just the people that's in this conversation.
Right.
What we need right now is everybody's attention. We need everybody to stop, because
I think it's like the little pieces bring us to the big struggle, and so it's a lot of I grew up Christian in a like kind of conservative church. My family wasn't, but my church was, and so I got people that I grew up with that like I'd like to have this conversation with, and one of my best friends and she sort of was like, but I don't know, having a confidence that like our relationship was gonna stay, and that like the truth was more important than like the feelings, and that being important to me. I think it's a lot of those like leaning into uncomfortable conversations, and it's not just hanging out with like my white progressive liberal friends, but it's, you know, like that's not doing good for anyone. And then I actually, in Seattle, I work at a school that is, it's predominantly students who are students of immigrants, so a lot of East African students and Southeast Asian students. And yeah, it's awesome, but then I'm also like their white teacher, and that's a funny power dynamic. So really constantly finding ways where the literature and the history that we're covering reflects their stories and their narratives, and so pushing against the Eurocentric textbooks that we've had, and I think that's important.
The question I was asking earlier about accountability by the community and of or for the community, like, what is your outlook on the lines between the dynamics when you have a group that stemmed back from civil unrest in our history, where there was groups like the KKK, in which we're seeing present now, but back then, you know, we had other movements that were by the people of that dynamic who were opposition of the KKK, such as the Black Panther. You had, you know, other type of movements and things of that nature. And that was a representation of the community by the community. How do you see, you know, in the dynamics in which it's almost like a micromanaging situation versus it being of the community by the community teaching, you know? How do you feel about that? Or does that make sense?
deep.
Yeah, no, I think so there's this pretty cool author, Chris Emdin, and I like follow him on Twitter, and he talks about particularly teaching students of color, and he says you can either do damage to the system or damage to the student. And and thinking about like well, and so you see disproportionately, especially black and brown boys are disciplined in school, and you know, maybe like a student is trying to like disrupt the classroom or interrupt the teacher or derail it, and instead of like pushing back against that kid and being like, oh no, this is how it's done, it's like, well, hold on, like, why doesn't he like the way it's being done, and does he have a better idea, and like how can I support him in what he's doing, and like the way he's kind of rebelling, being okay with that as a teacher. And that takes a lot of like humility and patience, but it's like, it's really important that those students' voices are validated, and so when there's not raising their hand to talk and they're speaking out of turn, it's like, well, okay, like forget all that crap, like what's he saying, and listening in that way. and it means, like, because as a teacher, I'm, like, part of the system, right? And I'm, like, part of that power dynamic. And so it's important to sort of, like, let go of that fear of control, of not having control, and be like, you know what, I, trust the students enough to have control. And so I start teaching. I haven't started yet. I've been assisting, and so I think it's going to be... Yeah, it's gonna be a lot, though. Like, it's gonna be a lot of, like, resisting that natural tendency of, like, you know, you need to be an authoritarian teacher or something like that.
Right,
yeah.
You are, the point of you being a teacher is so that you can get them ready for this, so that you can get them ready to work a 9 to 5 and to get ready to be always listening to the authority, always having that, instead of having that liberation to say, hey, I don't like it like this, so I'm not going to play your game. I'm going to go invent my own game, and then we'll see who the people like the best. And that's what it's about. Because you're doing it in a more liberal way, yes, thank you, because what you're doing is holding our future in your hands.
Well, and, like, I want them, yeah, and, like, we need our students to, like, be all that they can be. And if they feel like they need to fit in a 9 to 5 mold, or, like, a white American capitalist mold of, like, this is how you function, then we're, like, stunting our possibility as a community, right? Like, we're not gonna be able to benefit from their beautiful ideas or, their revolutionary ideas. That there's a lot of change that needs to happen, and if we keep forcing kids to act in the white mold that, like, our education system has, then, like, we're gonna miss out.
I got 2 questions for you. If we was to organize a strike where everybody just say, no, it's Monday morning and I'm not going to work, because if we don't go to work, then everybody loses money, and then that way we, the people, the real community, can fight back capitalism that way and white supremacy. So would you be one of those people that would be down and say hell no?
I want to say yes, and then there's always that, like, fear of, like not everyone joining in and not getting the word out entirely, and you see, like, people who are like, okay, so you can strike because, like, you're in a privileged position, but, like, me, if I don't go to my boss, he's just going to fill up with someone else. Then, like, hell yeah. And, like, also for me, but then for me also, like, I'm working at school, so I think, like, I would feel very safe because I can strike, but then it's also, like, I would probably strike. But then I don't want a substitute teacher coming in. Like,
Okay, so the strike does not apply, look at this face, does not apply to this one, because she needs to keep the baby safe. So go to work, don't strike. But if you had, like, let's say if you worked at, like, Starbucks or some stupidness like that, or, like, if you were stuck in a cubicle 9 to 5, you would definitely be like a hell no.
Well, and I'd be, like, talking to my coworkers, I was like, we can't come in. Like,
but I think you should go to work, because we don't want the kids to get in the way of the strike, so they got to go somewhere. So yeah.
Well, no, like, and also, like, yeah, I don't know, but, like, I remember it was International Women's Day or something, and people were trying to organize a strike of, like, seeing, like, look, where women aren't visible. But there was, I don't know, I heard some criticism of that being, like, it was a very, like white female, like, led movement. Yeah, and, like, and but, like, then also, like, women, not, like, women who worked in sort of, like, lower wage jobs who didn't feel like they had that same sort of power, or that same, like, independence in their work, like, they weren't a part of that. And so that's the problem when, like only a certain class or a certain group of people are striking. So what do you do?
Okay, yeah, but that goes also along with letting go of your micro struggles.
Right,
Getting rid of that. And realize that even if you're at the top of the A, you're really not at the top of the A. You're getting played just as much.
Like, we all, like, have to move forward together. It can't just be one person, and, like, yeah.
All right, and last question. Did you know that the KKK rally was coming to Berkeley and San Francisco?
No. Really?
That's why we out here.
Oh my gosh.
We got to get people aware of it. They're coming on August the 26th and August the 27th.
Isn't someone's death enough? Like, oh my gosh.
course they're gonna come to California, the most liberal state. You got to take out the most liberal leaders. So that's why we're out here, because I can't. We have to, you know.
So we have to curate those actions.
Right. Right.
Well, and people have to be like ready, because like the time is now. It's like, you know, I can sit here and talk to you all about like my good ideals, right? But then you have to back it up with your actions and be prepared.
But this is why we're out here with the camera.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna generate this on our media page, and this is how we're gonna try to get everybody, as many people as we can, together.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes. I think we wore out enough.
Smoking blunts and cashing checks. Got white folks like, damn, what's next? Yeah, you know what's up when you see us. Pay me my money and stop trying to be us. Smoking blunts and cashing checks. Got white folks like, damn, what's next? Yeah, you know.
Hey, I always got to pop the trunk in the mouth. I talk to you, though. Well, anyway, though.
Kick back and listen. Hi, I'm classy, or call me Pimptress. And there's no need to really mention I'm about this for you, so pay attention. Don't worry about the things, say yes. Then we on our way, cash checks. Ooh, you know I love this shit. I told Marvin this was gonna be a hit. And if you ain't down with us, then y'all motherfuckers ain't doing enough. And it's just that simple and plain. Civilized POC killing the